Hello, America, world. We could do this right away by A through Z. Our names have been in a semi-ancient trap. We have to use the hyper-evidential. The reasons that we need evidence. They have been American history to a certain type of victim slash hyper victim that a human fact tripping nature breaching method knew would speak for history and law before they were capable of it, but while they were pretending to anyway. Otherwise, they were sensed, even if they were a majority of people, black pupils. So, what we could do, for example, while we're doing this, we have to consolidate tasks. We can't we can't keep going like the names grouped too. All groupings of humanity then voiced. All humanity voicings. We are a species volume of individual bodies, species body of individual bodies. The identity of the hyper simultaneous, the distinct identity of simultaneous nature, shows us that we didn't, and the other creatures didn't invent the system that is in communications with us. For example, with difference, we have the same color eyes, different color eyes. And there are exceptions. Some people even have the same color eyes there too. The other animals have the same thing, /S. I tell best some ways, vaccines. Alone. Because since semi-ancient times, each age of correlation nature was shown other, our founders left us to communicate other for themselves, for example, not leaving out the value of why and of how. They had to counter or extort our other founders. And this is also where guilt is not the point with law. And that way, too, when law makes mistakes, it figures out fast. And it finds revelations. See, they have never found those revelations, even though they're like that, we agree. And who says they don't, they change their minds. And people aren't being honest. There's a means to show this. There is a hyper programming we can use and know that we use to an extent. For example, so to speak. And relative to this, it is the possession of any increasing volume as would generated / generates temporary / lasting identities of the progression of its body, a volume of forever nature. Just like we have cells that contribute to the growth of our body. And it is its own. See, but we have ignored this hypernative system. So it shows, because it showed for a long time, but we ignore it. We have what it shows us, and including negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. This breaching method employed them only capable of being, and knew that they would have assigned people. It assigned, just like you assign with programming. It assigned people to blame other things, others, ourselves for those negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and where and how we are quality as fact nature, where and how we are syntactically manifest, therefore functionally. So we are in a semi-ancient trap that came from before modern religions. How that is left out, where passions and emotions speak for the short words, with convictions, theory, and speculation regarding the religious books. For example, the Old Testament and the Quran. All this time, leaving out the parts in both books that says all that matters is right to hear. Nothing. It's in other words, all that matters right there in the beginning. People don't even know this. People are using quote. This is from the part after that. No, shouldn't have to debate over here. In other words, people will ignore you because the law says that we can only sue as individuals. And so in Connecticut into branch, so into switching names, I and then they pretend it's personal because increasingly they have collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness to the logic of people A through Z. For what nature shows, is capable of showing each, and showed me that and each campus we went to since before we were born, all locations, all exceptions with that, they were employed. The sense and sensibilities of Jane Austen, to use Jane Austen's phrase. But think about what that means, because I'm not putting it towards her concept. I did not read her book. I want to stay on the actual phrase and its conjunction to our human volume science, abridged. Therefore, the Constitution's abridged. Our innumerable rights prevented the quality of speech of short words for a whole bunch of methods manifest. I tell best boxings. So interstates, sickly distinctly, but also non-distinctly. On a mass scale, there are a bunch of employments that are and or are not intelligence related to them, etc. And that's with sense and sensibilities who speak for and as the identity of the law. Because everybody speaks for the identity of the law. But greater than and more finite than the law, while as its value, while in more ways, is what leads. In other words, that's why I suppose one of the they haven't appreciated properly the right to remain innocent until proven guilty. There are predicate acts with facts, methods, roles. Where and how the intelligence is where and how there is the hyper-possession, self-value, the hyper-projection, so the hyper-theater, self-value, criminally foreign influenced, relative to where and to how we have black people's rights of eyes, and nature speaking about difference. And this relevant, how people, the nature of debate, people say, oh, this person's crazy, or someone, oh, look at the behavior. They're keeping a psychopath calmness, and they're keeping psychopath's aggression. One of the things that is recorded at modern countries A through Z, they have used descriptions of emotions, tactical interior from how nature demonstrates we are to use motions functionally, and the total opposite of what they say. For example, if when someone's describing their own emotions or other people's, I'm talking about when there's descriptions of it. But I'm also not talking about it when they want to put loaded statements and questions after they've already been collusion/S. No. There are people from off our campuses that maintain a certain type of victim/hyper victim, self-valued roles, with every other person having been at those locations, having been involved with inceptions of all nature, private, overt criminal enterprises, interbranch, development, and roles as families, and with this word/value family, note with artistic takes on criminal enterprises, associated with predicate acts? No. And note a predicate being a word, one of the seven names for a verb, and for our appreciation of the identity of each part of English grammar, each part of all the parts of speech, not just all the parts of speech, but all parts of English grammar, individually finite, grouped, and all together. Alphabet. This is part of what faith is trying to have figured out or and revealed. Nature revealed how we think and how to describe how reason works. Before the scientists became criminally foreign influenced, and the fact that and how they are criminally foreign influenced, how they became criminally foreign influenced, how we have means to discern it. Not just a fact, but when people want to deny that, there were also demonstrations of their inherent active and progressive to the logic, increasingly, with that. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born. We are preemptively, actively, for other reasons apparent, too, and from reasons already having been, having people from other locations involved with what we have to counter that, which is non-distinctly against everyone, sickly distinctly. The only way to counter it is to do it that way. But it is sickly non-distinctly. I mean, it is sickly distinctly against everyone too. And nature wants us to appreciate how that, it needs us to appreciate how that is hyper additionally. See, we can make the greatest negatives into hyper positives. But the breaching method that was entrenched in America and other modern countries before their founders were born, already countries individually grouped and together, they were uses of names of the human species volume, tactically ulterior from what they wanted to be and what they could have been and would have been. But like the breaching method knew they would, they blamed other things, others, or selves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and wild ass collusions with itself, and for itself increasingly as hyper additional natures of organized crime and of criminal insidiousness and of the difference of that. And also with grouped countries, suits and ties, counters, and exceptions. Because now A through Z, even if it's a majority, even of countries, you are using defenses of practical postures, practical, short words, and natures of debate that can't defend themselves and afford to discern what is actually recorded in all locations, areas, and states. Predicate acts with facts roles, way beyond just being against everyone with black pupils, whites of eyes, and exceptions. Alive and dead, everyone. So, and again, hyper additionally, sickly distinctly. So the suburbs were designed tactically denatured as a landscape theater, while multi-front. For example, in 1822, before the Civil War, the Institute of Living was founded on the campus of Hartford Hospital. And before that, and through that, they had roles with slavery, North and South, against every single person and against our founders, who had to hide their actual roles and potentials and nature. Because the breaching method had facts, human nature, tortures, extortion, and slavery of everyone already having been sustained. All exceptions and exception nature, who was better off with that or who was worse. The nature of wealth. Either, if we can't discern between uses of that by the breaching method, it uses it to hide. It put all these hyper additional natures of industries, of names A through Z. That's why the part, what the part says? It says all that one needs to understand about the Old Testament is right to there. Where, you know what it says? It says the names of the people of the sciences will come together. See, but there is an inversion of that. They're using the short words, they're using the knowledge of good and evil to force, trick, hurt, and persuade. A quality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness / hypercriminal insidiousness. See, that's all three things if you count the slash as one. So, no, that's one thing, just like the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, /S. In appreciation of, in diffusion of gases in their mixture and of relativity to that value / value progression. And water and its elements and its relativity to that. See, relativity, science is about relativity. This put a whole bunch of trick games, a whole bunch of victims / hyper victim predators, where it employed people to use words like adults and like kids simultaneously, and the differences of them, and difference, to speak for difference. It is hyper evidential that not one person spoke for white, black exceptions or the difference that nature is communicating about, not just with that. That's why math values difference for where and for how. Even things that are negative can be hyper positive, not just positive. See, this breaching method employed criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and values / value progressions, where it is not debatable, where it is per method against each surface value of the Constitution while pretending to be other. There is a detective Samuda, and there is a Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced in the Corrupt Organization and Corrupt Organizations Act. And these are people involved on and off Central Connecticut State University with the people that deal with building computers at MIT and working with them in the stores, with people at Target, people associated with New Britain Superior Court, Connecticut District Court, Hartford Courts, certain type of victim / hyper victim before the World Trade Center attack, as collusions with people from Wethersfield and Interbranch, and wire crimes with Wethersfield police attaching little kids to fake conversations with themselves and with other police departments and families, bunch of them tied to Hartford Hospital and New Britain places. Now, these are people who had roles of predicate acts with facts, child abuses, elderly abuses at the same time as cliques, pretending that people had conversations with themselves, pretending about such. Tons of people. There's a difference between health. There are a whole bunch of people in the name of healthcare, even ones with badges and gavels, who have been tactically delusions wrought and criminally foreign influence fabricating transcripts, roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and child offenders, leaders of the kids, with relativity, the predicate acts with the facts methods too, roles with uses of confessions, the way a breaching method showed them, because that's what motivated everybody. again, as victims slash hyper victims. So I don't know what I was going to bring up. In other words, what we could do is stack means for for Iran and for Russia and Ukraine simultaneously, and these means entail and need a nature that is admitting what is that what the hyper capable of admitting and using the hyper evidential in courts A through Z, at countries A through Z. They have been not capable of entertaining short words of people using the hyper evidential. You have all been beaten out of using the hyper evidential. I don't care if you're leader, the most powerful leader, if you're above locations, areas, and states. For example, even the nature of debate, we would have realized by now, way before Boolean logic, the history of algebra came from what English was revealed to teach about. The history of programming is what English is revealed to teach about. Why and how there are 7 hyper invisible, but there's 1 hyper invisible, but still discernible. Conjunction 2. Well, not as, but while as anyway. Reason. That's the identity of the hyper simultaneous. Inseparable from all subjects the same way. The 7 names for the verb are for appreciation of the 1/3/5 ways it's connected. I mean, it's showing us its functional being the discernment of itself, being distinct as the subject, as the parts of grammar and the parts of English. For example, invisible about the visible but still discernible, distinctly from being about the hyper invisible but still discernible. The hyper invisible but still discernible is why each subject is simultaneously slash subjects, is simultaneously relativity slash hyper relativity. And there is what is greater than itself as the portion we have, in the portion we could deal with individually, grouped, or together. And it is portion that is greater than itself. But the part, in other words, part of what shows this is the value of sequence truth. But this cannot be in other words, all kinds of natures of there was post dating of documents, other natures of sequence shifting roles. Needs and natures on off the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center attack towers as names that are involved with New Britain Superior Court in Connecticut, Hartford Courts, and Connecticut's District Court before the World Trade Center attack. I've been roles planting evidences in with people from Wethersfield since I was a kid. Has something to do with people on all sides of the Wethersfield Community Center. And they've been stacking intercampuses and on off them roles with clearer than day remote uses of the identities of intelligence, which is 3 branches of government and exceptions tied to them. These are people on off the state corrections offices, involved with predicate acts with facts, whole methods, involved also with reports on street takeovers. And reaction per uses also of reactions to it and or non-reaction for the uses of syntax, uses of roles with the predicate acts with facts method /s, self-value, and or as roles with exceptions and with the difference. For example, increasingly where and how the nature of debate regarding the worth of any kind of a theory regarding relativity. Nature has stayed relativity, like why and how it revealed the species distinctly non-distinctly and simultaneously, but also hyper simultaneously. Same quality aspect in nature slash S. Just like all the different parts of our body slash S is a human species of individual bodies as a volume science. This is a punk game. The only three branches of government, they were child abused everyone, strictly distinctly. And at the same time, people on that work criminal enterprises, private one, people on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and names next to the buildings, like the people who attacked the World Trade Center. They also forced all other Saudis to collusions with our American side too. With the difference of that is also being haven't been used. Has something to do involved with people with the programs with the kids with Weathersfield. And these are also people involved with victims advocates at courts and with these relative tragedies where there are U slash S of negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, even when blamed on the right things. They're blamed on them exactly as collusion slash S. Two, that is also relative. These are people also on and off the state of Connecticut corrections offices through time involved with increasingly with people from my grammar school who have been involved with child who have been child abused um, per roles with various natures of federal criminals and organized crime bodies before they got caught, and with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and various natures of courts judges like a New Britain Superior Court has roles with judges, prosecutors, and their family members. And the difference between people, in other words, they've been roles with all sides in the cases. And it's also to make people say that so then they pretend it's personal, but they switch names. So there are more. These are also people with increasingly with KKK crimes and with federal crime, with child offenders. There was a Mark Violet, a whole bunch of people with the military, with Justice Levinskis also involved with a Tim O'Brien and a Ray Collo with fabricating conversations with police, with little kids, fake conversations, fake ties to them. And then as adults, they also have their roles with people at Hartford Hospital who did the same, fabricating conversations. Has something to do with their roles with Russians at the corner with the name Peruta and fire departments involved with planting evidences with state police, FBI, and as victims, hyper victims. Then they have to lie about. In other words, there's a hard job to do. We have to thank God we have police. They're playing punk games where if you don't if you or you're saying something bad about the police. That's how they keep them criminally foreign influenced. You guys are laws of voices. You guys never spoke for the law properly. I have to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, not police form, not a criminal, not a judge. You guys have also innocent people and criminals. You have a reported serial killer, convicted serial killer in the body dumping spot in West Hartford slash New Britain, involved with a whole bunch of different countries leading up to, and our militaries too. Kuwaiti military, American military. Not even if there's legitimate things you guys are involved. Those campuses never stopped being involved. They affected confessions to me when I was in third grade. That were tied to people playing games with predicate acts with their family and kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Now there's a Joshua Julian. I never had anything to do with him. I never saw him around campus in my life. Never saw him. I never partied with him. Like he was pretending with different narratives. He's involved with a whole bunch of intelligence people on and off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University who are involved with Weathersfield Police and wire crimes with names on my street. And they start fights between people since they were kids with these gangs because there are foreign bodies involved with them. There are people like a DeMoro too. They have roles with home break-ins still, and Heather Hansen, others on corners of streets and along streets, like on Church Street in Old Weathersfield. WTNH has roles with people with their teacher. There are people that did. There were conscious uses of the departments of Central individually grouped in together. They're also putting fake evidences on campuses filmed 24/7 away with pretending not to realize the quality of fact treatment nature at interbranch locations is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusion raw, and, and incapable of defending itself and affording to protract, to be, let alone to protract, short words with convictions, theory, and nature proper regarding American history and the nature of the debate regarding it. Otherwise, we would have realized, we would have, even though our teachers have had criminally foreign influence and simultaneously tactically delusion wrought takes on American history distinctly from the kids. I loved my teachers, and I loved, and don't, no one I hated or didn't like. All exceptions, I even like that because this is how I know about all this stuff. These are the people with the World Trade Center attack roles. A former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, Thaddeus Grabowski. They're involved with a whole bunch of people on off Fox Connecticut News and on off WFSB. I'll sign that I won't sue Fox News if you guys help me, because these are people who have been at each age of. It has something to do with WFSB has roles with people that were in my fourth grade class that have involvements with multiple mayors, with sexual and medical offenders, and digital offenders of kids, and people pretending to be about such and getting away with it. For example, where they put things that like, oh, either you think A or B, and they're leaving out what came first. These are people that have been planting evidences on sides of parks, including with the mayors. And they have roles of whiting forensics through time. Whiting forensics through time has been roles with also criminally foreign influence uses of confessions manifest, where and how investigators, their campuses, their homes, their everyone next to everyone are used criminally foreign influence to screen the foreign bodies. So neighbors, I love you all. I'm trying to help you guys. What helps you or hurts you through what feels good with he said, she said. That's why it's important to get on paper, because mandated law dictates what you all can't afford to have discerned without pretending not, in other words, oh, let me put it on paper. They're refusing to identify themselves. 3 different police reports for 3 different instances with people with the name McGee. And they make threats. They confess to Weathersfield police. They only have one guy named McGee. Now there's one with his kids involved with Weathersfield Parks and with Rocky Hill schools and the policing of it. I don't even know if he was actually in that class though. I only went there one time, and it has something to do with the people involved with the Jonathan Maiano and Joe DeMoro and their roles with Rocky Hill since they were kids in Weathersfield and Hartford. Those spots next to Hartford Hospital, the 3 spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike, are people involved with sequence shifts, and including when I knew John Maiano and how I knew him. They make fake exceptions too. So, and these are people involved with uses of location /S by the hyperforeign. But to discern these are also people roles with a whole bunch of different countries on and off Tungus Community College, Central Connecticut State University. Then when we speak about this, they leave out what was actually communicated when what actually unfolded. See, but they're putting fake audio and video transcripts on campuses that are filmed 24/7 as collusions with people, like people with the name Oliveri have roles with predicate acts and fake and identity thefts and frauds, slanders against me with teachers that I had and involved with child abuses that way. They don't even know or not. In other words, that's why we have to get people on paper. These are people also involved with former director of FBI with on all the state judicial branch offices. Also with us, Joshua Stryker, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, lying about himself and me since he was a kid I never had anything to do with him. They tried to make a fake exception. It was a demonstration, the same thing. Them involved with identity theft, frauds, planting evidences, timed collusions with distinct identities of criminal insidiousness natures, like unions, these their family members. That's also the family member of a John LeConte, a Don LeConte, involved with the courts, involved with predicate acts intercities through time and on and off the campuses connected, and increasingly with more child offenders with the schools. They've been putting fake audio and video on the schools when if parents call up. Fox News has roles with the other news with intelligence community next to them, influencing them that they also have roles at Hartford Hospital with the people next to and with medical systems, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. Social Security has a whole bunch of people involved with medical corruption, identity theft, fraud, and drugs and medicines crimes. They're attaching little kids to fake uses of drugs, and they're having the ones that use drugs with them, collusions with them. They're not really against drugs and alcohol. Their roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases through a predicate acts method roles. Whole bunch of people tied to people named DeSimone and Cololo and and O'Brien. They brought this up with the judges and prosecutors associated with them because foreign bodies are using them remotely since they were kids. Everyone. Forgiveness is so we could have them from stop switching names and forging names with the police forms intercities. So Rock Hill campuses, please. There are 3 officers that or more that confess to using the names McGee on different police reports. As people involved with Rocky Hills campus and Weathersfield campus further with the principal child abuser and their roles with untimely deaths at Trinity College, because former director of the FBI's roles with it, and relative murders, even if they were all made up, they have recorded predicate acts with facts, collusions with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Since I was a kid, timed uses of it as people involved with relative identity theft, fraud, slanders, and child abuses that are KKK, black themed, and Confederate flag themed, and where they're starting fights with child offenders, sexual, medical. They have knife threats and gun threats with the intelligence community. They never had their acting professors are also involved, along with houses on and names associated with them on Church Street and Old Weathersfield. They're involved with medical corruption intercampuses through time, also with intermilitary, foreign and domestic. A whole bunch of people within, in other words. So get them onto paper, please. And this, that's also tied to that Detective Samuda. He has roles with the courts, put it with the people with the courts, with the FBI and other police forms on off Central Connecticut State University, also with the Dean Judd and his family. Your Honor, /S, Judge Janine, and Judge Napolitano. Your Facebook pages are being and have been used remotely where and how they have readings of statutes. Also with their thoughts regarding the relativity. They have rape threats with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. Then they made a whole bunch of them to like obfuscate it as timed collusions with other natures of organized crime and sick things that are relative to where and to how they want to control subjects, because they have roles with their patients and criminals and with all cases that came before them and everyone they talked to since before they were in there. Those places have been sick, all places. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born. Knock, knock. It's a knock, knock joke. Does anyone remember knock, knock jokes? Folks. Thank you, people. David Key, please get them to get on paper so I don't have to use people's names, like with the Tungus Community College. They have a whole bunch of people with the intelligence community there and their roles with other countries, like Korea, involved also with psychiatry and like with people with from Italy associated with this John, people with the name Joe Demaro, Tony Demaro. They have roles on off Harvard Hospital with a whole bunch of other countries with the World Trade Center attack. People with the name Scalora. There are people with the name Scalora involved, and Demaro. And as the ones with the name Colola were involved with a Bob Chase and writing forensics since I was a kid, more and more with predicate acts with the same house slash S and tides involved since before they moved there, and with retired police chiefs, the police chief Cintron, and his family is involved with writing forensics on Elm Street through time, and on off WFSB, who I can't call them because of the wire crime acts and methods the intelligence community already used, and self value, which is also use slash S by the breaching method, which screens itself by having made and making more hyper additional motivations to blame other things, others, ourselves for the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts in nature. For example, where and how this is conjunctive to New York City, more so, more capably so than the investigators associated with that. And the people who rolled the dice and now want to pretend they did service and it's worth what it isn't, who have collusions, who have fake transcripts about that, as the roles with the people leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. A whole bunch of people tied to the victims too, who had roles with my name used, have roles with the home break-ins and identity theft frauds. That's how they're hiding lie progressions. These are the people involved with the houses on Church Street, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones with grammar school kids and middle school kids that aren't even in the same classes, never see each other around campuses. And then with private schools, they're lying about what they think about how they know people. A Mr. Abruzzi is involved attaching me and others to fake ties, natures of ties to other kids, like a Joe DeMorrow and a John DeMorrow involved with sexual and medical crimes against little grammar school girls with proven child offenders since before they got caught and since, and with former Director of FBI Robert Luskin and other co-defendants of his involved. There's a Robert Chevrolet in the location of his, and next to his location too. His Robert Chevrolet, his law offices on Asylum Avenue, I believe it's Asylum Street, near the state capitol, near the Harriet Beecher Stowe slash Mark Twain house, also involved with the people next to the state capitol through time, involved with the O'Brien family, increasingly involved with identity thefts and frauds with people I don't know their names and people that are, all investigators have been used remotely, criminally for and influenced. These are people pretending that others are making allegations so they could hide the foreign bodies, not legitimately. There are a whole bunch of countries without, and they share uses of phrases, all words, so therefore phrases, criminally foreign influence slash tactically delusions raw, like criminal justice. So they have retired and standing um, intelligence community at Central Connecticut State University. Each of the departments, they're obfuscating each science's name, is valuing the other sciences criminally foreign influence of bridge natures too, because they can't have afford discern why and how really the identity of verb is as a hyper invisible but still discernible. Again, those 7 names. And there are two part. It can either be a participle nature, which the gerund, and that can be if it's constantly a a gerund is constantly what a present participle is. That's distinct from saying a present participle is always formed by adding ing to a verb. And a verbal could be either a present participle or a past participle. And then there's a predicate, a verb, a present participle, past participle, a verb, present participle, past participle, a gerund, a verbal, and a predicate. That's the six. What is it? There's another one. But so in other words, this is appreciating the 1/3/5 ways the identity of forever nature, that is 5 distinct bodies of time. It is the value as what is true, before the smallest finite detail now, like, for example, of the republic for which we stand, of its campuses, and of where and how. It is discerned functional, positive or not, at location /s, the ground's identity, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. See president/chief. See how there are 3 volumes as our founders who were not Native American, who had to counter extort the other founders at 13 positions in more than 13 colonies. As those founders, and ones who had to gather in with that, and thank God for the people forced to that, not for that, not for the help like that. But that's not help. No one helped. Thank God. In other words, you guys are founders too. If you're a president, in other words, debate on Native American versus American. That's used to measure and maintain Boolean logic roles entertained, narratives, natures, about what's positive about him or negative with the person too regarding that. He's positive. Everyone's positive. See, everyone from off all locations. This employs people to roles with use/s of hyper. Additionally, identities of value/value progression that can't defend themselves and afford to be voiced. What is actually capable of being correlated/hyper correlated. See, we have black people, white guys just left out all this time. What caused slavery? They blamed it on our founders. How did they get away with that? They were dishonest about their roles with dishonesty, method, about the torture of, and about the extortion of our founders and of George Washington. But before physics, and then with it, of James Madison and that plan with them. That's what we were supposed to learn. Oh, well, where's your research? I shouldn't have to have research. They have torture rolls on people. They pretend they think unrational things about American history, and they fake conversations to do it. The ink bladder test is involved with this. They also fabricate audio and video transcripts. Hartford Hospital has roles with names, switching and forging, and identity thefts and frauds intercampuses. A whole bunch of people from Central Connecticut State University with the intelligence community and Trinity College have roles with predicate acts for people on Church Street in Old Wethersfield. Also, with the spots next to and conjunctive to and adjacent to, and the difference of that, the witch trials place, and place Web House with no the Web House, and then how they changed the name of it and the narratives with that. This is a victim predator, hyper victim slash hyper victim. There's also a Robert Rodriguez, who's one of the ones involved with the families with the World Trade Center, including the victims, who had and have roles with predicate acts, with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting evidence, fake type motivation ties to people, fake nature ties to people, on and off parks, and with the news involved with predicate that World Trade Center predicate acts with them, and hiding behind that. They have courts involved with um, Alex Jones countering him too. People on off the state judicial branch offices for all the courts. But these are the people before the World Trade Center attack. Hartford courts. As people, they involve confessions of New Britain Superior Court involved with it. People. I found out too, it has the Connecticut's District Court involved with it a whole bunch of ways. At West Hartford and New Britain locations, that were influencing people with their social interactions with me. The roles with them with behavior racketeering, roles with them with worse than war crimes, predicate acts with facts, methods slash S roles, and this is recorded. See, these are people tied to the borders. There are proofs that I don't know if they're related to them, Judge. The military recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed also the switching of the name. Believe used to be Brittany Farms Road. There are people with the military there that are criminally foreign influenced, involved with medical corruption with a whole bunch of different countries, where they're involved with it. They lie about themselves and others since they're kids, as people who have roles increasingly with saying things weird and weird behavior as strangers, and timed use slash S of that with the interbranch have been attaching me to fake conversations with themselves, also with this Leahy family of doctors, and ones with the name Lombardo, involved with the people on off the state, on off the community center too. And they're involved with sequence shifts too, don't forget. So please follow men to the law for them. They have a whole bunch of judges and their family members involved through time. People with fire departments, they have roles with all these different companies, something to do with that. And I don't know that Paul Abted and his sister, they have roles with people with digital child offenders too. People, I don't know them. They're with the Hartford Hospital, with the people involved with a whole bunch of murders, and the girl who was dragged to her death from there, involved with the people involved. There's a Joshua Julian who's involved with a Mike Violet. I believe he worked with a furniture place or something, and a Mark Violet, and they're involved with planting evidences, fake transcripts, fake evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with people on and off campuses with fake things into databases of kids' schools, attaching kids that aren't even in classes together, with military next to the state capitol, with this Czech Casper, and I don't know his father's name. People say I have a Czech Casper and a sister. I don't know his sister. They're involved with the intelligence community, foreign and domestic military next to the state capitol, involved also, through time with East Hartford people, with the East Hartford intelligence, and people that are planting evidences with people with the name Bajario, and people on off Central Connecticut State University. They have rules of wire crime acts and methods. There was an officer at Magnanos and people with the name Magnanos, male and female, at Central Connecticut State University, recorded involved with predicate acts with facts there and on my street with the people, with the officers switching and forging names. And he made confessions about his ties to Stephen Manos. Stephen Manos, Steve Manos was one of the people who was one of the observers, as I was, with both names. For example, right there, with that name is one of the ones involved with predicate acts against me, leading up to that was after the World Trade Center attack. But I was there too in the Ninth Circuit Court right before the World Trade Center attack, and the night before it, in other ways, short term. The same ones who've been planting evidences and roles with identity thefts there have been people on the campuses that roles with it. Quinnipiac University has roles with various natures of organized crime and crime bodies, proven and unproven yet. But as the people involved with medical offenders of kids, foreign and domestic, and where and how there are uses of them pretending they could speak or take part with polling people properly, black pupils. So we need landlines too. But the only way we could survive as country A through Z is if we do not ignore the semi-ancient trap. Having left out, for example, have legal nature that left out from common use and understanding why and how our names are simultaneously by nature. The other countries look more like us than us in some way, one way. And we look more like them than they do, one way. Not physically, with discernment. With discernment's looks. As yin yang. As what we could see and discern simultaneously. As alpha and omega. As what we could discern. But we have to couple it with care. But with it as our agenda. That which is hyper-native pure. And it rewards us. So, Maxine, I teach us things. Someone please get them. I swear to God, I'll tell no truths. I'll tell no lies. Judge Napolitano. In Fox News. But I don't have any more time. Through different ownerships of the building next to Fox News is reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People on off 2 Rod Highway, and people next to schools, next to Fox News, are the ones involved with the child offenders on off the campuses, identity theft, fraud, slanders through time. It's relative. There are conscious uses of the phenomena set up for them, through themselves, showing how to, of how we have different classes from people. And like, for example, when I was in my grammar school, the way it was set up, and it was with the principal child abuser was exploiting it, and there were more people working with the schools involved with it, and their uses of the corners of the streets next to it with the news too. And they've been making things up so they could use the locations criminally foreign influenced. There are judges with whiting forensics further involved with the principal sex offenders campus and with other campuses, planting evidences, and as collusions with them that forced it. And as collusion with people involved with it had roles with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso in the past and timed at that role, and that roles with it. As it has something to do with their roles with Central Connecticut State University. Something to do with their roles with the different ages too of the members of Mr. Abruzzi involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. I was only polite in his class and minded my own business. I didn't even talk. They're putting fake things every year, sickly distinctly. The same people involved. That was my 5th grade class. The 4th grade class has something to do increasingly with the same people with the South Sevilla and the ages of his family members involved with the intelligence family members, as ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the mayors. I don't know him and he doesn't know me. Everyone's speaking through